Josh, how are you?
I'm good. Look, so y'all are eating breakfast. So this is an empty bowl here that I just scarfed down of some of the nastiest sugar-free oatmeal that Nashville, Tennessee has to offer.
Oh.
So I don't know what you're eating. I'm telling you it's better than what I'm eating. So now what are you eating?
We have Shipley's, but we also have Torchy's tacos. So I've got a Torchy's breakfast taco.
So there's flavor.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Actually
Bacon,
filling.
eggs.
You enjoy it. Yeah, okay.
Queso fresca, whatever that is.
You're actually going to know this about me, but I actually enjoy non-sweet
sugar-free oatmeal.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
That's awful.
They serve this stuff at Guantanamo. I think I got it shipped here from Guantanamo. This stuff is disgusting, but I have to put myself through it.
You're about to start confessing all your deepest, darkest secrets. Stop eating that. Josh, when are you making your way to town?
So I heard you talk about some of our friends in Austin, Texas, before the break, and that was very flattering. So I cannot participate in that because I'm flying into Austin in a few hours.
Yep.
So I have to be very careful. I got to mind my P's and Q's at least till I get out of that airport.
No doubt.
I'm going to come in there later this evening, though.
Well, hey, you're agnostic. You do a hell of a job. I've really enjoyed. I actually read that article about you yesterday, so it was really
With Jason Barrett?
it was fascinating to read about the background and stuff. And just coming from me as an Aggie, I've loved what you do, and want to see the rise continue. So we're excited. I'll meet you this weekend. So I look forward to it.
I appreciate that, guys. I really appreciate that. Can you believe we get to do this stuff for a living?
Right.
No.
I know you've done it longer than I have, man, but it's wild to even think about that.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Kyle Field. So have you been to Kyle Field before? Is this your first trip?
I've been out there one other time. I was out there a couple of years ago before the pandemic when Bama came in there. It ended up being a blowout game, but I mean, my biggest takeaway was that team, that home team there, that A&M team, ended up getting some margin run up on them. And yet I still walked away telling folks back home, hey, you guys in like Birmingham and Montgomery and Columbus and Macon, that place is different. Because to them, like to us, those of us who grew up in the SEC, A&M's been here almost a decade now, or about a decade, but it's still new. And so there are a whole lot of people in the footprint that have not been out there. So I'm fortunate enough to have been out there once before, get to go out there again. I know, man. Like I know about A&M. Some of my folks still don't know, though.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear, and I believe it too. Like Georgia's never come here,
right?
And then a lot of Kentucky's come on, but a lot of teams they've come once maybe in the 10 years, and if you miss that game, you still don't know about. So Josh, you were here 2 years ago and saw like freshman named Jalen Weidemeyer score a touchdown in that game. You saw a freshman running back named Isaiah Spiller. You saw Damani Richardson as a freshman pick off Tua. A lot of young talent in that game that are now juniors. What's your takeaway on this A&M team, watching it from your vantage point, like kind of how this season has gone and where they're at right now?
Yeah, it's a really good point there. I was thinking about that actually within the context of this game leading up to it, about the first time I saw some of those guys and now what they've become. I mean, Weidemeyer is probably one of, if not the biggest keys in this particular game that we're going to watch Saturday. But what's so interesting is Jimbo walks in there. It's not this outright reclamation project, build it from the ashes or anything like that. Yeah. But there is obviously a rebuild and a retool that needs to happen. And it's been so fun to me to watch the year one, the year two, to watch the thumbprint. Like I'm a believer that every year subsequently that a coach is at a program after the year he's hired, all that's happening is he's taking his thumb and he's just pressing it harder and harder against the program. So right now, you look at a Texas A&M program, and it's not always apples to apples because they had to make a change at quarterback out of necessity. But you start seeing a deeper imprint of Jimbo Fisher. And I've told folks this, speaking about the A&M experience, I've also told folks this who haven't seen them in person. You guys see them all the time. You get to see them in practice. You know how physically impressive that roster is. Everyone doesn't know that. I see Bama up close all the time. I see Georgia up close all the time. A&M is the only other team in the SEC outside of LSU. A&M is the only other team in the SEC that for the last couple of years, if I put Georgia jerseys on them or if I put Bama jerseys on them, they would pass the physical smell test of, yeah, that's Bama. Yeah, that's Georgia. Like they're physically that impressive. The only thing that's, really held them back, I'm preaching to the choir here, is the elite high-level quarterback play hasn't been there to fully leverage a lot of those pieces. And maybe they haven't always been where you want them to on the perimeter skill-wise.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee they're a lot closer now than they were when he took that job over.
Josh, for this game specifically, where do you find Auburn vulnerable? And on the same token, A&M?
So there are reasons to believe there should be a lot of edges for A&M in this game. The same thing that was going Auburn's way last week that made me feel really good about them against Ole Miss, you could just as easily flip it on its ear right now. And it's all about dynamic. You don't even have to go on a grease board and X and O it to death. When you talk about coming off your bye week, which Auburn was last week, and they played a very, very beat-to-death Ole Miss squad, they got some confidence about themselves, as they should have, from that outcome. But now they have to go into a road environment against a rested team, and this is a team that out-athletes them to at least a marginal degree. So when I say all that, you'd say, okay, well, suffice it to say your pick is probably A&M by double digits, right? That's where I think the game gets a little bit closer. Mm-hmm. Because as much as A&M has come on offensively since they found the rhythm with Calzada, what I still wonder about is against teams that are really good on the line of scrimmage, which, you know, all due respect, Missouri is not, for example. Against those teams on the line of scrimmage, can we see those fourth quarter efforts against the Alabamas of the world? Can I see that duplicated again? And can I see it duplicated when it's not a surprise? I know everything I need to know about Zach Calzada. I need to know everything I need to know about what they are going to do offensively. Can I see it duplicated? Now, the answer may be an emphatic yes. We may see 37-17 Saturday, but I think equally or more likely is the scenario where you're watching the game, A&M's got a marginal yardage edge, nice little time of possession, yards per play edge, and you feel like they're winning the game, but it's one of those where you say A&M's outplayed Auburn, and then you also say, oh, look at that, it's a one-possession game anyway. Right. That's kind of the way I feel it goes Saturday. I lean A&M to win the game, but I think it's a knife fight.
Well, Josh, I think everything you said I've expressed this week, and that's why you are who you are. You're covering the entire league, you're covering the entire country, but yet you can drill down an A&M game like we are sitting here. I 1,000% agree with you. I think the key all the way from I think A&M has more talent. It's marginal, like you said, but I think they're the more talented team. I think they have the better top-end players in this game. They're playing at home. It's why I'm picking A&M, but I think it's going to come down to the final 5 or 6 minutes of this one, the last couple of drives. Where I think you nailed it, and one thing I'll say too, to me, for Texas A&M, the two position groups, if I could have any two that you told me were going to excel tomorrow, I would say let it be the offensive line against that Auburn defensive front that is it's not necessarily Bama, but it's light years better than what they've seen the last 2 weeks. And let the Aggies secondary, this needs to be a game where they really rise up, because I think they've been a tick behind some of the other units. And if they play well, I think these Auburn receivers can make you pay, but I don't think they're anything close to elite. And if they can lock it down back there and make things difficult on Bo Nix, and I think that's the game the Aggies pull away in that other scenario you said.
Yeah, here's the other thing to think about. So this is a really interesting point, and you can really dive in a lot deeper than that. On the Auburn receiving corps, on Bo Nix, if you just look at the stat sheet, their last few weeks, it speaks volumes, but yet you need so much more context. Because if you do just the standard split between functional play and broken play, a majority of their offense through the air is coming via broken play. Now, I know that screams to you, okay, well, just keep Bo Nix in the pocket. It's hard. Yeah. It's really hard to do against him. But I'm telling you, there's a reason this team fired their wide receivers coach about a month into the season.
True.
It is not a good receiver room by traditional standards. Where they're great and where they've been coached to death at this point is come back to the ball, get yourself open, scramble drill, broken play, pocket move, launch angle changes. That's where Auburn excels. And if they end up beating A&M or they end up doing more through the air than you think they would, that's exactly where it'll be. It won't be on standard plays. It won't be on anything that's in the playbook. It'll be when the playbook breaks down and Bo Nix, it just takes 2 or 3 times a game sometimes to tilt a game. That's how they'd make their plays through the air.
Give me, Nuño, you got an Auburn A&M specific question? Because I want to ask him rankings and playoff.
I was actually going to ask him about which is the harder matchup for A&M. Is it this week against Auburn at home against a higher ranked team, or is it Ole Miss next week on the road, a banged up Ole Miss, I'll say?
Yeah, I'm incomplete on that. I was trying to come to that own conclusion myself. I don't really know because I don't know what Ole Miss is. And here's the problem. Ole Miss had their bye so early in the year. Now they had it before Bama, but it didn't matter. And so you don't get the fruits of that right after it. And then you say, oh, wait, so we got Bama. Then we got to play Tennessee and Arkansas and LSU and Auburn. They got Liberty this week, guys. Liberty has fallen short of expectation, but yet you know good and well Hugh Freeze perceives himself as competing with Lane Kiffin for some of the same jobs out there. So it's a Super Bowl mode for Liberty this week. Like just because they're not playing an SEC game this week, Ole Miss is not off by any stretch. So I'm saying that to say, I don't know how much of Ole Miss is left. I don't know who they have and who they don't have next week. So that could change my answer by like 2 touchdowns. So by default, I'm going to say this Auburn game.
I will too. And the thing about, I think it would really behoove Lane Kiffin to, if he could just sit Matt Corral this week, but against Liberty and Freeze and Willis in Oxford, that ain't happening.
That ain't happening.
So it would be really nice to sit him and just run the heck out of the ball and run your offense. But that's not going to happen. In the initial CFP rankings came out. It's what it's all anyone's talking about. Zero problem with where A&M's at. Like that's not what we're discussing this week. It's all about what's going on in that top 10. I'll start by saying I kind of like what they did to OU because of what we've seen from them. And one time, Josh, and maybe it's this weekend, I really want to dive into your power. Like I love I want to get into like really understanding it. I'm fascinated by it. But just these playoff rankings, OU at 8, leave them out of it. Tell me, what was your biggest surprise / disappointment where you think they got it wrong? And then what's one that you saw kind of like I did with OU where you said, yeah, that they got that right?
I was pleasantly surprised that Oklahoma is where they are.
Yeah.
I don't think it was any kind of, miscarriage of justice. I didn't have a huge problem like you with any slotting of any of these teams. Even, if you wanted to argue semantics with me, Michigan State 2, Bama 3 instead, that's fine. It's all irrelevant. I think we all understand that. But why I was so pleasantly surprised that OU is where they are is because they're behind Cincinnati.
True. Which
renders all of this talk moot. When someone tries to come to me on the street, and even on the streets of Nashville, this happens. They come to me and they say, Cincinnati's where they are because of anti-G5 hate. There's just G5 bias out there. And here's what comes out next. If Cincinnati was a perennial Power 5 brand name that was undefeated, they'd be higher. Well, I can call BS on that in 2 seconds because Oklahoma is all those things, and they're behind Cincinnati as an undefeated team right now.
Yeah.
I think the guys like Dave Bartu and Adam McClintock, they have really knocked 15 holes in this thing when those guys are able to predict with about 95% accuracy the order of these rankings before they're released.
Mm-hmm.
It shoots all the holes in the argument that these folks are just going in a room and just deciding on a whim how this is going to stack up. That's not the way it works. It's not. It turns out that's never the way it's worked. It's just, it doesn't fit that old narrative word that I hate using. It doesn't fit it. So people want to believe, it's the same folks that would tell you don't open your closet at night. You never know what's in there.
Hey,
I
John,
found a snake in my house the other day, so that
you did.
I believe those old folks.
I said 95%, not 100%. There are the 5%ers out there.
Hey, Josh, we got to hit a break here, man, but I look forward to meeting you this weekend, and big fan of your work, and looking forward to catching up with you again here on the show soon.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you very much.